Today, I want to talk about something that might sound a little counterintuitive at first. It's about letting go, not giving up, not checking out, not being lazy or careless. I'm talking about something much more specific. That moment when you stop gripping so tightly, stop monitoring every little move, and just let things flow. And here's the wild part, that's often exactly when things start going right. Some days, nothing works. The harder you prepare for a presentation, the more your hands shake when you get up there. The more you try to impress someone, the more you stumble over your words. The more desperately you try to fall asleep, the more your brain refuses to shut down. But then you give up trying to fall asleep, and you're out within minutes. You stop overthinking that conversation, and somehow the other person texts you first. You dash off an email without agonizing over every word, and someone replies, "This was so natural, I loved it." Now, here's the thing, this might feel like a coincidence, a lucky fluke, one of those random things life throws at you. But what if it kept happening? What if the same pattern showed up over and over? In job interviews, in relationships, in creative work? Because it does. And it's not random. Think about a job interview. You spent 3 nights preparing. You rehearsed every possible question. You had your answers down cold. But the moment you sat in that chair, your mind went blank. The words you'd practiced 100 times just evaporated. Then maybe a few weeks later you walk into a second interview more relaxed. Maybe you grabbed a coffee beforehand and just kind of rolled with it. And the conversation flowed. You were funny, natural, present, same person, same qualifications, completely different result. Or think about someone you really liked. You kept dropping hints, putting in effort, making sure they noticed you. And the more you tried, the more they seemed to pull away. Then you hit a point where you thought, you know what, forget it, and you just went back to being yourself. And that's when they came to you. Or here's a classic one, writing. You sit down fully committed to writing something great, and you stare at a blank page for an hour. But the moment you tell yourself, I'll just write whatever comes to mind, suddenly, there's momentum. The words start coming. We usually brush these moments off as luck. But if the same thing keeps happening in the same kinds of situations, that's not luck anymore. That's a pattern. And patterns have explanations. Here's one of them. The more intensely you tell yourself you have to perform well, the more you start to interfere with the very thing that makes you perform well. Here's why. A lot of what we do, talking, walking, interacting with people, runs on a kind of autopilot. These are processes your brain has practiced so many times that they happen almost automatically, without you consciously directing them. The moment you put those processes under a microscope, that autopilot gets disrupted. Try this. Think about how you walk right now. Think about how your foot hits the ground, how you shift your weight, how your arms swing. Feels weird, right? Suddenly you're almost tripping over yourself, doing something you've done 10,000 times. That's exactly what happens when you over-monitor your own performance. And it shows up most clearly in areas where naturalness is everything. Speaking, sleeping, connecting with people. When you're lying in bed thinking, I need to fall asleep right now, that thought alone is enough to keep you awake. When you're in a conversation thinking, I need to seem interesting and funny, your energy shifts and people feel it. The problem isn't the effort. The problem is trying to perform and observe yourself performing at the same time. Those two things fight each other, and usually, the performing loses. Now, and this is really important, I'm not saying effort doesn't matter. It does. Preparation is real. Practice is real. Hard work is real. But there's a difference between preparing and executing. When you're preparing, the more focused and deliberate, the better. Rehearse, research, practice. But when it's time to actually do the thing, you have to give your brain some room to breathe. You have to trust the preparation you've already done and stop white-knuckling the outcome. Prepare fully, then let go of the grip. And this over-controlling tendency shows up in more ways than you might realize. Some people over-explain in conversations. Some go completely silent. Some start obsessively managing their facial expressions. Some reread the same email 20 times before hitting send. So let me ask you something. When you feel that pressure to perform, what does your version of over-control look like? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious and I read them. Now, Here's a distinction that really matters. What we're talking about is not laziness, it's not indifference, and I want to be crystal clear about that, because they can look similar from the outside. Laziness means you never fully engaged in the first place. You didn't care. You didn't try. What we're talking about is something different. It's doing the work fully, thoroughly, and then consciously releasing your grip on the outcome. It's not turning off your care. It's turning off your obsession with control. That distinction? Way more important than it sounds. There's a concept in psychology built around this idea that flexibility and acceptance often produce better outcomes than rigid control. People who have to control everything, who need every outcome to go exactly as planned, tend to fall apart when something unexpected happens. But people who can hold their goals a little more loosely, who can roll with surprises, tend to stay steadier when life doesn't follow the script. And here's the core insight: some things get bigger the harder you try to eliminate them. Anxiety, self-consciousness, creative blocks. The more you fight them head-on, the stronger they get. But when you accept them first, when you stop declaring war on your own nervousness and just let it exist, something shifts. Resistance loosens. Space opens up. The thing you were fighting stops fighting back. So what does this actually look like in practice? I've got 3 small shifts. Nothing dramatic. You could try any of these today. The first one is changing one phrase in your head. Instead of "I have to do well," try "let's just see what happens." This sounds almost too simple to matter, but language shapes how your nervous system responds. "I have to do well" is a threat. "Let's see what happens" is an invitation. Before your next presentation, before a tough conversation, before anything high stakes, try making that swap, just once. See if your body loosens even slightly. The second shift is building a gap between your preparation and your performance. Whether it's an interview, a presentation, or an important conversation. Once you've finished preparing, step away from it completely for at least 15 minutes. Take a walk, watch something unrelated. Let your brain reset. Don't keep drilling right up until the last second. That doesn't make you sharper, it makes you tighter. A short mental break before you go in? That can make a real difference. The third shift is this: instead of focusing on the outcome, pick one process-based goal. Not "I need this presentation to go perfectly." Instead, "I'm going to actually listen to what the other person is saying," or "I'm going to take a breath before I respond." Something you can control, something in the doing, not the result. When your attention moves from outcome to process, the grip loosens naturally. And ironically, that's usually when the outcome improves. So here's the bottom line: stop trying so hard to perform and start trusting the work you've already done. It's not about effort, it's about knowing when to hold on and when to let go. And honestly, that's harder than it sounds. If you're someone with high expectations for yourself, if failure feels scary, if you're always aware of how others are seeing you, letting go might feel almost impossible. And that's not a character flaw, it's a pattern, one that often goes way back. Why do some people struggle so much more with letting go than others? Where does that grip even come from? That's exactly what we're going to dig into next time. If today's video helped you see something differently, hit subscribe before you go so you don't miss that one. And hey, if today was a hard day, if things just weren't clicking, no matter how hard you tried, maybe that's not a sign you need to push harder. Maybe it's a sign it's time to let go.